Hi, my name is Linda Johnson. I am 63 years old, and the company I gave 31 years of my life to stole 62 from my very last paycheck the day I walked out that door. What they did not know is that I kept every single pay stub. Everyone. For 31 years in a shoebox under my bed, and when I found a 1967 Department of Labor ruling buried in a government archive, their lawyers stopped laughing. If this has ever happened to you or someone you love, hit subscribe right now, because what I found in that archive changed everything, and you are going to want to see how this ends. I remember the exact moment I opened that final envelope. It was a Tuesday, September 14th, 2021. I had worked for Hargrove Manufacturing Company in Denton, Ohio for 31 years. I started there when I was 32 years old. I ran the accounts receivable department. I knew every invoice, every ledger line, every number that passed through that office. Numbers were my whole life. And on the last day of my career, after 31 years of perfect attendance, after 3 decades of staying late, of covering for colleagues who called in sick, of training every single person who sat at the desk next to mine, they handed me a final paycheck that was $62 short. I stood in the parking lot and I counted it 3 times. I thought I had made a mistake. I had not made a mistake. I drove home on Route 9 with both hands on the wheel and the envelope on the passenger seat, and I did not turn the radio on. My husband Gerald was in the kitchen when I came in. He looked at my face and he did not ask me how the last day went. He just poured 2 cups of coffee and set one in front of me. I sat down. I put the envelope on the table between us. I said $62. He looked at the envelope. He looked at me. He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I am going to find out why." That was the beginning. What nobody at Hargrove Manufacturing Company understood, what their payroll manager and their human resources director and their regional vice president never once considered, was that I had kept every single pay stub from every single paycheck I had ever received from that company. 372 pay stubs in a shoebox under my bed. I did not keep them because I thought I would ever need them. I kept them because I am the kind of woman who keeps things. My mother kept things. Her mother kept things before her. In our family, you did not throw away a document until you were absolutely certain it would never matter again. I was never absolutely certain, so I kept everything. The morning after I found the shortage, I pulled the shoebox out from under the bed before Gerald was awake. I sat at the kitchen table in the early light, and I went through every stub from the last 6 months. I lined them up in order. I got out a yellow legal pad and I wrote down every gross amount, every deduction, every net figure. I wrote the date next to each one. I did it slowly. I checked my arithmetic twice. When I was finished, I had a clear picture. The $62 shortage was not a rounding error. It was not a clerical mistake. It was a specific deduction listed under a category called Administrative Separation Adjustment. I had never seen that phrase on any pay stub in 31 years. I wrote it down on the legal pad in block letters, and I underlined it once. I drove to the public library that afternoon. I asked the reference librarian for anything she had on federal wage payment regulations going back to the 1960s. She pointed me to a row of binders on the 2nd floor that smelled like a church basement. I pulled 4 of them. I sat at a table by the window and I read for 3 hours. I found it in the 3rd binder, a 1967 ruling issued by the United States Department of Labor under the authority of the Fair Labor Standards Act. The ruling was specific. It stated that any deduction made from a final paycheck upon an employee's voluntary separation from employment must be disclosed to the employee in writing no fewer than 30 days before the separation date. The deduction must be itemized, explained, and signed off on by the employee before it could be legally withheld. Hargrove Manufacturing Company had handed me that final envelope on my last day of work. No written disclosure, no itemized explanation, no signature from me, nothing. I sat very still at that library table for a long moment. Outside the window, a man was walking a dog along the sidewalk. He stopped to let the dog sniff a fire hydrant. He moved on. I wrote the ruling number on the legal pad. I wrote the year. I wrote the name of the act in full. I wrote one more line underneath it. They never told me. They never asked me to sign. They just took it, Over the next 4 months, I filed a formal wage complaint with the Ohio Department of Commerce. I sent a certified letter to Hargrove's corporate headquarters in Columbus with a copy of the 1967 ruling attached. I sent a second certified letter to their legal department. I kept copies of everything in a manila folder I labeled with a single word, evidence. Their human resources director called me on a Wednesday morning in January. She had the careful voice of someone who had been coached on what to say. She told me the administrative separation adjustment was a standard company policy. She told me it had been applied consistently for years. She told me it was perfectly legal. I let her finish. Then I asked her one question. I said, "Can you show me the written disclosure you provided me 30 days before my retirement date?" There was a silence on the line. Then she said she would need to look into it. She never called back. Their outside legal counsel sent a letter in March. 4 pages, single-spaced. It used the word standard industry practice 7 times. It offered me a goodwill payment of $210 in exchange for a signed release of all claims. I read all 4 pages. I folded the letter. I put it in the manila folder behind the certified mail receipts. I filed a complaint with the Federal Wage and Hour Division of the United States Department of Labor in April. I included the 1967 ruling, the pay stubs, the certified mail receipts, and the letter from their legal counsel. I included a timeline I had typed out on Gerald's old typewriter, 1 page every date in order, starting with September 14th, 2021, and ending with the day I mailed the complaint. A federal investigator named Carol Simmons called me 6 weeks later. She asked me to walk her through the timeline. I walked her through it. She asked if I had documentation. I told her I had 31 years of pay stubs in a shoebox. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mrs. Johnson, I am going to need you to bring that shoebox to our regional office." I brought the shoebox. I also brought the manila folder, the legal pad, and a copy of the 1967 ruling I had laminated at the copy shop on Birch Street because I did not want it to get damaged. Carol Simmons looked at the laminated copy for a long moment. She said she had not seen anyone bring a laminated ruling to a wage complaint hearing before. I said, I wanted to make sure it lasted. The investigation took 8 months. In June of 2023, Hargrove Manufacturing Company entered into a consent agreement with the United States Department of Labor. The agreement required them to audit the final paychecks of every employee who had separated from the company in the previous 12 years. They found 217 other workers who had received the same undisclosed administrative separation adjustment. 217 people who had never been told, never signed, never agreed. The total amount owed across all those years came to just over $280,000. My share, calculated with interest and the federal penalty multiplier applied under the Fair Labor Standards Act, came to a separate resolution. Monthly payments, adjusted for inflation every 3 years, transferable to Gerald when I am gone. All because I kept a shoebox under my bed. All because I wrote down a date on a yellow legal pad and drove to the public library on a Tuesday afternoon. All because I was the kind of woman who does not throw things away. Gerald and I had dinner at home the night the agreement was signed. Nothing special. Pot roast and green beans and the good plates we only use on holidays. He poured 2 glasses of wine. He raised his. He looked at me across the table and he said, $62. I said, $62. We did not say anything else. We did not need to. If a company has ever taken something from you, even something small, even something that felt too small to fight, I want you to hear this. They count on you feeling too tired, too small, too uncertain to push back. They count on you not knowing the rule they broke. They have lawyers and human resources directors and 4-page letters designed to make you feel like the law is on their side. Sometimes it is not. Sometimes there is a ruling in a binder on the 2nd floor of a public library that says exactly what they were required to do and did not do. You do not need to be a lawyer to find it. You need a library card and enough stubbornness to sit at a table by the window for 3 hours. I had both. Subscribe to this channel right now because every single week I am going to bring you another story exactly like this. 1. Real rules, real rights, real women who held on long enough to make the lawyers pick up the phone. And if you know someone who got shortchanged and walked away, share this with them today. It is never too late to open the shoebox.